Well, hi, I'm Lindley Burns, and I'm in my 10th year here at Pensacola Christian. And over those years, I've been able to teach in a variety of high school classes, but now serve as the principal of grades 7 and 8. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to sharing with you some ideas as far as guiding secondary academics. Are you thankful for the opportunity to have a part in Christian education? And not just teaching the next generation, but training them in the things of our Lord. Having a spiritual ministry and strong academics are two major distinctives of your Christian school and sets you apart from other schools in your area. Well, in this session, we're going to look at some ways to build a reputation for strong secondary academics that really starts with our teachers. So as we build that academic reputation, we'll be increasing our spiritual ministry and influence due to the excellence in the education that we provide. We serve a God of excellence, do we not? And shouldn't that be reflected in our daily secondary academics? One of the major responsibilities of a principal or administrator is the role of a quality control expert. We make decisions in our personal lives based off of this idea. Maybe the fact that when we are traveling in an unfamiliar state, we may choose to stop at a chain restaurant rather than maybe a hole-in-the-wall cafe. Or maybe it's going back time and time again to that same barber or same hairdresser. We place confidence in those who service us with consistency, day in and day out. So how do we develop that reputation for our schools? How do we effectively fill the role of a quality control expert on the secondary level, ensuring that we're providing a consistently good and even excellent product year after year from one grade level to the next in the high school area? We're going to look at a number of aspects of quality control in our time together. But let's first look at the resources we need to be able to provide our teachers to ensure quality instruction. The first of those resources is a solid curriculum to follow. Too many people shy away from a curriculum because they see themselves as enslaved to the curriculum and deprived of the opportunity to personalize their teaching. Well, a good curriculum really does quite the opposite. It's intended as a guide rather than a master. So it frees really the teacher up to be creative by providing the what and when and allowing the teacher to provide the how. Well, the use of a proven curriculum throughout our schools is a huge step in the right direction of quality control. The curriculum gives stability and consistency within and across grade levels. It's a proven recipe for success. Even if you find the need to change a teacher maybe mid-year, learning is still going to continue seamlessly along the same path. Employees may change, but the manufacturing process, it stays the same. So the curriculum can really be described as a plan for meeting that year's objectives. So in grade 7 all the way up to grade 12, that is going to be your goal, your objective. What do you want them to learn after each subject is taught, after each grade level is passed? It's also a guide for the use of the materials and resources that you've given your teachers. Hey, when to use these flashcards, when to use these particular maps. Whatever it may be, it helps to have a flow to that particular school year in that particular subject area. Well, the key parts of the curriculum really is threefold. First off, you've got your scope and sequence. It's going to tell you, okay, this massive book, this physics book, or these multiple books with English, hey, over the course of the year, this is what we're going to cover. But the sequence allows you to say, this is what's covered in first quarter, and this is what is going to be covered in fourth quarter. And it helps to break it down. The next part would be the front matter. The front matter gives kind of a heads up. Hey, how to best use this textbook? What's the heart behind the textbook in being able to teach the students, and how can you use it effectively? And then you have your daily and weekly lesson plans. Those help the teacher tremendously by breaking up that 200 plus page textbook down to your 180 or 170 school days that you have. Well, the effective use of the curriculum is going to assure that a good product is going to be turned out regardless of the years of experience of that teacher. It can make a weak teacher better, it can make an average teacher good, and it can even make that strong teacher excellent. Well, have you considered your classroom observation as another resource your teachers need to be successful? Our human nature thrives off affirmation, does it not? We want to know we're doing a good job and accomplishing what's expected of us. Well, our teachers need to view our classroom observation time as our investment in their success. It should be something that they anticipate and appreciate rather than something that they dread and they fear. And that outlook really comes down to our salesmanship of it. So let's think about a couple of things. First off, have we told them we're coming to observe? We're not telling them, I'm coming to you on Tuesday during your second hour class. Well, then we don't know if they were prepared for the rest of the school day. We just know second hour on Tuesday, they were ready when we came in for our observation. So we're not giving them the specific date and time, but we're giving them the expectation that we will be in, and they should find that a help. Our observation should not be something that sends shockwaves through them. It should be expected. And then, have we told them what we're looking for? Really, we can kind of branch it into two different topics, two different things that we're looking at when we go in for a classroom observation. One element would be the teaching techniques, the art of teaching. So what techniques are being employed in the classroom? Are you seeing concept explanation take place? Is it clear? Is it concise explanations? Or is there a lot of extra verbiage and they're teaching around the core matter? Is there student interaction? Are there questions being asked? Are the students involved in illustrations? You need to see that interaction as a part of teaching. And then you have the sequence of learning. Usually it begins with a catchy introduction. In fact, let's look at an example from Mr. Busey's English class, how he is introducing verbal, which may not be a fun thing, but he uses a catchy introduction to be able to pull them in, and now he can teach them.
Put your pen or pencil in your book and close it. Look up here. We're going to talk about something else today. It's a little bit different. How many of you have ever seen something that is like a counterfeit product? It looks like something, but it's not really that. What are you doing dealing with counterfeit? I'm just kidding. When I was a senior, we took a class trip to Washington, D.C., and the really cool thing to do back then was to go find one of these guys on the streets that was selling these really cool-looking sunglasses. They look like these really expensive designer sunglasses, like the Secret Service would wear. And the guys selling these would claim that's what they were, like these are really fancy name-brand glasses. And they say, here, I'll sell them to you for $10. And they're like, ooh, $10, I don't know. And the thing was you had to negotiate. And so when I went there, I negotiated down to $5. And I got these really cool looking sunglasses for $5. And all of us got them. We're like, oh yeah, we're really cool, man. We got our cool glasses on. I was real proud of my glasses. We came back to school. Everyone had their cool glasses. I don't know why we thought it was cool, but everyone had to get the glasses. And we would argue about who got the best price on them. Well, what do you think happened to those glasses a couple days later? Yep, snap, broke. Did I have the cool designer glasses? No, I didn't. I had fake glasses. And so they looked like the real thing, but they weren't quite the real thing. Well, that's sort of what we're talking about today in grammar. Something that looks like one thing, but when you actually dive into it and try to explore it and figure out what it is, it's actually something else.
Another step in the sequence of learning is going to be a connection from the known to the unknown. It's a building process. It's a stepping stone process. And we need to see that evident in our classrooms when we go to observe. So there should be all sorts of connections. Maybe it's a connection such as we've been adding and subtracting like terms, and now we're moving to solving equations. And all we're doing is we're adding and subtracting like terms on either side of the equation. Let's look at an example from Mrs. Odom's math class as she makes a connection between constant variation and slope.
Let's get into the idea of graphing using direct variation. In fact, if you remember our last lesson, this right here is actually no different. It's actually just a little bit easier. Okay, if I were to give you this formula, y equals kx, you know that the k is the constant of variation, so I'm going to erase that. And let's say that this is very similar to y equals mx plus b, isn't it? The only thing that I'm missing is I'm missing a plus b. I'm missing a constant, right? So watch this. If I give you an equation, y equals 1/2 x. I'm going to erase this plus b here so that you're not confused. That is not the formula for direct variation. There we go. That's the formula for direct variation. But do you notice that I'm missing the plus b there? So here I have it. Y equals 1/2 x. Now, if I don't have a constant, if it's not written there, it's an understood plus 0. It's an understood plus 0. Now, here's another relationship that you have to know. Ready for this? Do you see how 1/2 goes in front of that x? In my slope-intercept form, what also went in front of my x? Jaden?
Slope.
The slope. So think with me. Okay, got your thinking caps on? If slope comes in front of the x and constant of variation comes in front of the x, isn't it true that constant of variation is the same thing as slope? And that's a true statement, okay? Constant of variation is your slope.
Do you see how she built off of something that they already knew to build into the new concept that they were learning today? We should see that connection in our classrooms. We should also see different review techniques. Is review happening? Maybe at the beginning, at the end of the lesson? Is there questions sprinkled throughout it? Maybe in the different elements of an English class, there's review at the end of each of those elements. Are they including all the students? We should see review. And then that tying the knot at the end. Did they really comprehend what was taught in that lesson? Did they help to wrap it up? And are they ready for that next day of learning? So teaching is one side of it. The other side would be the management skills. It's a science and it's a skill to be learned. So as you're looking at your teachers when you go to observe, are they organized? Do they have all their things together? Were they prepared for that day? Is there a smooth operation of the classroom as they go from one activity to the next, from one phase of learning to the next? Discipline is also going to play a role. It should be minimum that is needed and quickly administered to allow for a good flow to the class. So let's look at Mrs. Odom's math class again as she goes from her classwork into her homework presentation and her management. Watch her management of her time and the inclusion of the students through the process.
Any questions on your classwork? I know we worked through some of that, and there's a reason for that. We're going to use this idea right here, the idea of combining like terms in today's lesson. So it's super important that you get this right here so that you do well in today's lesson. All right, let's check your homework from last night. That was on page 489. So it's actually on the same page here, 489, and we did numbers 1 through 14. So number 1 is actually on the board for us. It was done by Clara. So Clara, could you explain to us how you did number 1?
I multiplied 5 times -6 and got -30. Oh, I multiplied it 5 by -6m squared and got -30m squared. And then I multiplied 5 times 2m and I got 10m.
Good. And because you'd multiplied 5 and 2 and got positive, you put a positive sign right there. So it would be negative 30m squared plus 10m. Any questions on that one? Number 2, this one's not on the board. Tell us what you got for your answer, Natalie.
Negative 14 d to the 4th power plus 6d squared.
Good. Number 3, Cody.
(44c cubed minus 80c squared).
Good. Number 4, Kajal. This one was on the board by you.
The original problem was 9d times 3d to squared plus 10d, and then I distributed and then multiplied, and then I got 27d cubed plus 90d squared.
Good. And that would be her final answer there. Remember, there's a positive 1 as your exponent here. So you would add 1 plus 2, and that gives you 3. You add 1 plus 1, and that gave you 2. So that's why your answer was just like that. Both of these numbers gave me a positive. That's why she has positive right there in the middle. Any questions on 4? Great job, Kajal. Number 5, this one, Natalia, what'd you get?
(132p to the 5th plus 36p cubed).
Good. 132p to the 5th plus 36p cubed. Michael, 6.
I had to multiply negative 6y times 2x cubed, and I got negative 12x cubed y plus, and then I had to do negative 6y times 3x, and I got negative 18xy.
Very good. Now, why did you not do anything with the exponents on the y and the x? Like, why didn't you add them together?
Because they didn't have the same exponents.
They didn't have the same base, right? Because y is not the same thing as x, so I cannot multiply their exponent, or I cannot add their exponents there, okay? Because they're not like bases. So you would just write them in alpha order just like that. Now, one thing that I would say as far as your work goes, to make it more simplified, okay? To take out this positive and literally just keep that negative, okay? Because you multiplied negative 6 times 3, you got negative 18. Your final answer is negative 12y cubed minus 18xy. Is the answer wrong for me to say plus a negative? No. But the most simplified that you can be is to take out that plus and just keep that negative right there. Does that make sense? So that would be your answer just like that. Any questions on number 6?
Another thing to keep in mind in our observation is, are we taking brief notes during that observation and following up with them after that observation? Train your teachers to come see you the day you observe. It's fresh in your mind and it's fresh in the teacher's mind too. And it will be a help to them to provide affirmation in the strong areas and then share helpful tips for improvement in those weak areas. Now, maybe you haven't been in the habit of classroom observation. Where do you begin? Well, here's a couple of thoughts. Begin by observing your newest teachers. Are they following school procedures? Are they enforcing your school's policies while providing quality instruction? Hey, if you can catch something week 1 as opposed to week 8 or 12, what was just a small problem in week 1 could have been multiplied, but if we can catch it early enough. So get in to view your new teachers first. Then observe teachers that you already know are weak and pinpoint areas of improvement. Help them set specific goals for their personal growth as a teacher. Small, meaningful changes that make a big difference. That's what you're looking for in their teaching. And then don't forget to observe your experienced teachers regularly too. You'll be encouraged that all that they are accomplishing, and you'll gain some valuable ideas to be able to share with the rest of your faculty. And you'll maintain that quality control they've already attained. Now, if you're in a habit of observing regularly, make sure we're getting sufficient enough time. Hey, 2 hours a day is a good goal to set. 10 to 12 hours per week, and you're helping. Sometimes it may be just 15 minutes in a classroom is all you need for that observation, or it may be an entire class period. But let me tell you, you're going to have to schedule them to make them happen, because everything else will begin to clutter our schedule and force us out of the classroom. And we need to make sure we force ourselves back in. Use your secretary if you do, to be able to protect that observation time. Now, once you're in a good habit of classroom observation, you're going to naturally begin assessing the quality of the teaching environment as you visit the classrooms. So ask yourself several questions to assess each classroom environment. First off, is learning taking place, or is the teacher just lecturing? There's a difference, isn't there, between teaching and telling. There's student interaction that should be very evident in their teaching. So are they truly teaching, and are the students really learning? Here's another question. Do you sense an urgency for learning in the classroom? Is every moment being used to its fullest, or is there wasted time? Another question, is the teacher asking higher level thinking questions like how or why, or are we only hearing the who, what, when, where types of questions? We have to teach and test on the same level. So if we're expecting on a test for them to be able to describe things and analyze, we need to be seeing that in the teaching and in the questions that are being asked in the classroom. Are all students being brought in to learning, or is it just a few? Are the weak students being targeted to help them progress? Are the advanced students being further advanced, further challenged in their questions? Is everyone involved, or are they always just picking on the ones that are raising their hand and those eager volunteers? Is the teacher asking enough questions to yield a formative evaluation? We don't want to wait to quiz or test day to know that they really didn't understand something. And that is helped through the questions. So are the teachers asking enough? And then is the teacher guiding the learning? Or are they answering questions and preventing rabbit trails? Are they whetting the student's appetite to want to learn more? They're eager. Learning is taking place, and they're helping to guide it, and they're not getting off track. And then ask yourself, are good procedures in place to help maximize teaching time and minimize wasted time? So what I want us to do is watch a little portion of Mr. Busey's English class. And I want you to ask yourself some of those questions. Were there procedures in place? Was there a sense of urgency? Was he including a variety of students? See if you can pinpoint some of those areas in this short clip.
And number 6 is firmament, noun, the infinite heavens.
Firmament, noun, the infinite heavens.
And Ray Ann, read that sentence.
On the second day of creation, God divided the water from the firmament.
Good. So the firmament is just everything around us with the infinite heavens there, and God divided the water from the firmament on the second day of creation there. Good. All right, you can go ahead and close those and put those away, and get out your grammar books. Have those closed on your desk. In a second, we're going to go over all the exercises you did, but before we do that, I want to wrap up some final review from the pronoun unit with what we talked about most recently. So let's look at some of these sentences here. He himself or he his self scored 22 points. Class, it would be? Himself. Good. Don't forget, his self is not a word. What's the other word that we learned that's not a word? That's similar to this? Their selves. Good. Their selves is also not a word. All right. Them photographs are exquisite, or those photographs are exquisite? Those photographs. Don't say them photographs. Them is not a demonstrative pronoun. Them flowers are real pretty. No, you don't say that. Those photographs are exquisite. My cousin, he serves in our country. What's wrong with that one? He. Good. We just can't have a double what? Subject. Good. So instead of saying my cousin, he serves our country, just say my cousin serves our country. All right. The next one. Whoops. There we go. All right. Our next sentence is this. If I can get it to come up. Here we go. You or your submitting the paper on time shows diligence and hard work. What would we do for this one, Joseph?
Your.
Okay, good. Why would it be your? Do you remember the rule?
No.
What's this word submitting?
It's a gerund.
It's a gerund. So what case do we use before gerund?
Possessive.
Good, possessive case. So good. The answer here, of course, is your submitting the paper on time because you use the possessive case before gerund. Excellent. My uncle is the man who, whom, or which takes care of the church gardens. Who or whom always refers to? People. Which always refers to? Things. What word can refer to people or things? That. So who and whom are always people, which is always things, and that is both people or things. All right. So in this one, my uncle is the man. We know automatically which word is not correct. Which. Good. So it's either who or whom. So don't forget, when you see who or whom, think clause. Good. And find your verb. All right. So in this clause, who or whom takes care of the church gardens, what's the verb? Takes. Good. And then who or what takes? Who takes. Good. It's the subject. So I choose nominative case, which is who. So my uncle is the man who takes care of the church gardens. All right, one more. The storm, who, whom, or that came through last night, blew down several trees. I would say the storm. That. Good, because who or whom always referred to people, but that could refer to either. All right, let's go over the homework that you had. And that was on page 179, exercise A. And we'll start with Sarah's side of the room this time and work our way around. Sarah, number 1, tell us if that was a sentence, a fragment, or a run-on. By the way, I should mention that 2 lessons from today will be our test. So our test will be in 2 lessons, so we're starting a good review today of grammar for that. Go ahead.
Run on.
All right. Read that out loud.
The Hawaiian Islands, located in the Pacific Ocean, have several active volcanoes, increasing the island's land masses.
Good. So how many complete thoughts is that?
1.
It's just one complete thought. Located in the Pacific Ocean is actually a participial phrase. We'll talk more about those later. But that's actually just a sentence. Number 2, Aiden. And then Leah, you can do number 3.
Run on.
All right, read it out loud.
In 1810, King
Kamehameha
the First changed the name of the islands from the Sandwich Islands, as Captain Cook called them in 1778, the Kingdom of Hawaii, which means homeland.
How many complete thoughts were there?
1.
It was actually just one complete thought with a lot of phrases. So just because it's really long doesn't mean it's run-on. How many had a sentence for number 2? Good. So if you were confused by as Captain Cook called them, that's a dependent clause describing islands. That's not a complete thought. And which means homeland is another dependent clause. So don't be confused by dependent clauses there. Number 3.
Fragment.
Good. Number 4, James.
Run on.
That one is a run-on. And number 5.
Fragment.
All right, read it out loud.
Oh, run on.
Read it out loud.
The Iolona Palace, located on Oahu, is the only royal palace in the United States, and it has electricity before the White House did. And you.
How many complete thoughts are there? There's 2, right? But how are the 2 thoughts separated?
By a semicolon.
So it's actually a...
Sent.
Yes, it is a sentence. How many had sentence for number 5? I know, good. I know those were a little more tricky, but yes, that one was a sentence. Don't forget, if you're joining sentences, it has to be a semicolon or comma conjunction or something like that to join them together. All right, let's go over exercise B.
He accomplished much in that short time, did he not? He had good procedures. He had good sense of urgency. Those students knew what was expected of them, and he could move seamlessly from one thing to the next. He was well prepared for that lesson. So ask yourself those questions as you observe in your classrooms. Continued observation is also going to heighten our awareness of the differences between a skill subject and a reading subject. So let's look first at the skill subjects. Skill subjects would be things such as grammar, spelling, mathematics, a skill that needs to be practiced. So when you observe in those classrooms, you're going to see the teachers, hopefully, explaining the rules for that particular day, and then demonstrating that. There's absolutes. It's not just the student, it sounded right to put that particular verb in the sentence. No, they need to put that verb in that sentence and that particular conjugation of that verb because they know the reason behind it. They know the rule behind it. They're going to solve that math problem by a set standard of rules, and they're not just going to make it up. It's not up to individual interpretation. You should also see frequent use of the chalkboard or the board. That's the practical application. You have students practicing those math problems so you can identify errors and help their understanding improve. So practice, practice, practice. As you even saw from Mrs. Odom's math class just a little bit ago, you saw even in the homework presentation, those problems that she had up on the board, she would mimic that in her lesson and have students put up those problems and explain their process. And it helps their understanding. So those are some elements of a skills subject that you should be able to see when you observe in those classrooms. But what about a reading subject? Well, reading subjects would be history, science, and the literature component of your English class. So for the reading subjects, reading is done in preparation for the next day's class. So they're asking questions to ensure that the reading really was completed. In that homework presentation, they can figure out if that student really did do the reading and understood it. Is there connections from the known to the unknown in those reading subjects? And is there connections of terms and place? It's not just bold print term to bold print term. They're missing everything in between if they don't build connections of those concepts. And then there's a movement from memorizing facts to then understanding those concepts. So that way they can ask those higher level thinking questions. So let's take a peek in Mr. Smith's history class, where we can see the connections that he puts in. He's not just talking about a bold print term of inflation, but he is going to describe inflation, and then how does that connect to the farmers? How does that connect to the political scene?
Okay, so what does that do to the value of the dollar? Paul?
It brings the dollar amount down.
By how much?
Half.
By half. So, Paul, this $1 is worth how much?
50 cents.
It is worth 50 cents. That's exactly right. So, Paul, come back with me over here. If I want to buy something with paper money that is worth $1, how many dollar bills am I going to have to use?
2.
I'm going to have to use 2. Thank you, Paul. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. You're a farmer. You owe the bank $50,000 for the loan you took out to buy your farm. Got it? Why would a farmer be, by the way, this is called inflation. Why would, when you got more paper money than gold or silver backing it, why would a farmer support inflation? All right, so they owe the bank, sorry about my horrible handwriting, okay? $50,000. I think that's what I said. They owe the bank $50,000. If they can get you to pay more of these for their apple, for their corn, for their wheat, okay? Does this loan go up because inflation goes up? No, it stays at $50,000. If they can get you to give them more paper money, okay, then they've got more paper money to give the bank and pay off their loan quicker. Anybody confused by that? Does that make sense? Now, you may be thinking, I don't know about this. What do the farmers not understand? What are the farmers not seeing down the road? All right, it used to take you, Monte, $1 to pay for that apple. Now you are giving me, because of inflation, you are having to give me 2 physical dollars for that apple. Then I can give one of these to the bank. Now I only owe $49,999. April, what are the farmers not realizing when they are in support of inflation? JT, over here.
Their tools and machines will cost more.
Okay, if the apple's going to cost you more, is Mr. Tractor going to cost you more? Is feed and seed going to cost you more? Absolutely, okay? They were not seeing it in the long run. So, Lindsay, we've got a lot of farmers. They are getting politically savvy right now, and they are all for inflation. So that's the big topic right now, and I want you to have that mindset as we get into this right here, okay? So there's inflation. That is for expanded currency. And the greenbacks, Congress said, hey, we're going to stop issuing the greenbacks. The Civil War is over. Let's stop doing that. Uh-oh, that puts less money in circulation, which makes the dollar actually worth more. That is not what farmers want. They want you, in theory, they want you to give them $101 bills for an apple, okay? And what are they going to do with 99 of those bad boys? Go give them to the bank, correct? Okay. Now the bank knows they're worthless, but the bank can't adjust the loan that you took out based upon inflation. It became such an issue, it became a political party. Look at this. The Greenback Labor Party, okay, Greenback Labor Party advocated for the increasing of the number of greenbacks in circulation. Well, you got a president, Rutherford B. Hayes. He supported backing the greenbacks only if there was gold. There was enough people in the Greenback Labor Party that said, okay, well, at least don't destroy the greenbacks that are already in circulation. And the government said, okay, we won't do that, but this becomes a very serious issue. Okay, now I want you to take a look at inflation from the opposite side. With the Greenback Labor Party said, let's print, go over to the printer, hit quantity, tap, 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 right? The free silver movement has to do with the government buying, not gold in this case, but silver there's more of, okay? Gold is more valuable, silver is valuable, but a lot of silver mines were getting discovered during this time, and the farmers were like, hey, what about the purchasing of silver and things like this? So look at this, the free silver issue.
So that would be an example of a reading subject, what we should be able to see in our classrooms, those connections taking place. Now finally, our frequent observation will also help us yield a cognizance of the themes that should be evident in each subject area. So let's look at a few. First off, let's start with math. Math is an exact science because of those absolutes. So the mathematical rules that God has put into creation, because those are absolutes, our students just can't make up their own rules. However, as long as none of those mathematical rules are broken, a student we can allow to think on their own with the tools that we've given them. I'm thinking like a word problem, and that would be fine to do, only though within the framework of those mathematical laws. You should also see in those math classes a step-by-step process taking place. So let's go back to Mrs. Odom's math class and watch as she goes step by step through a process of a particular problem and the involvement of the students along with her.
All right, step number 1. What is step number 1, Natalie?
Simplify each side of the equation.
Now, is there anything you can simplify on either side of the equation?
No.
No? This kind of looks a little messy over there, though. 2 parentheses 3x plus 5.
You can add the 2 and the 5.
I can't add those. What operation is between the 2 and the parentheses?
Multiplication.
Multiplication. Now, watch this. We learned this back in chapter 3. When I have multiplication outside of a couple things inside of those parentheses, what property, I'll give you that hint, what property am I going to use?
Distributive.
Distributive. So think about it like it's candy. Take that 2 and distribute it to everything inside of that parentheses. Okay? So when I distribute, what operation do I do?
Multiplication.
Multiplication. So distribute that 2 to everything. What would that give you, Natalie?
6x plus 10.
Very good. 6x plus 10. Take the 2 and distribute it to everything. So 6x plus 10 is equal to 28. So if you see that, distribute. Okay, Clara, what's your step number 2? So 1 we've simplified. Step number 2.
Isolate the variable term.
What's your variable term?
X.
No, that's just the variable.
6x.
6x, very good. And what am I going to do to get 6x by itself?
You're going to add 1.
Now, what's beside the 6x?
Addition. 10.
Addition plus 10, right? So what's the opposite of addition?
Subtraction.
Subtraction. And what number am I going to subtract?
10.
10. Very good. What you do to one side, you
have to do to the other.
Have to do to the other. So subtract 10 from both sides. And Clara, what am I left with?
0. Oh.
Yes, those cancel. What else am I left with, though?
6x.
6x is equal to?
18.
18. Very good. And now I've got 6x by itself, right? So then what's my next step then, Mackenzie? After you've isolated the variable term, now what?
You have to isolate the variable.
Isolate the variable itself. What's the variable itself?
X.
X. So get X by itself. How are you going to get X by itself?
You're going to divide each side by 6.
Divide both sides by 6. And what would I be left with over here?
You would have 1x.
1x, which is just x, is equal to?
3.
3. 18 divided by 6 is 3. And that would be my answer. And again, you can check that and it would give you the exact same answer.
She drilled those steps, did she not? And the students knew them. And if they didn't, she helped them get to the right answer. Hey, step-by-step processes, enforcing those rules should be very evident in our math class. What about English class? Language is a God-given gift, unique only to humans. God, the creator of order, did leave man to establish the order of our language. But we've established practical rules following a traditional approach allows us to pass our language on from generation to generation. Now, the English language really has two aspects. It has grammar and it has literature. So if we think about grammar, there's the technical aspect of communication. So we're helping them to be able to spell words in spelling. We're helping to build their vocabulary to be able to understand many things that they read and for them to be able to be a better speaker because of the vocabulary we're building. Poetry, there's specific concepts, right, with the didactic pentameter and you name it, that they're learning, the grammar, that technical aspect, the many different rules, how to apply it, how to write a good sentence. And then there's the literature aspect, the inspirational aspect for edification. Good literature is going to help point students to Christ and to a profitable discussion of human nature. Good literature also helps our students to be able to discern right from wrong. And sometimes the teacher needs to help guide the students' understanding of, hey, what's the biblical integration in this particular piece? What is our response? What should we gain from it? So let's take a peek in Mr. Busey's English class as he introduces two different literature pieces that they had read the night before.
Today we're looking at a new poem and then a new story. So page 371, we have the poem Faith. I want you to mark John Greenleaf Whittier as an author to know. So mark John Greenleaf Whittier as your author to know. He was known as the Quaker poet, and he was considered one of the great poets the great poet of the anti-slavery movement, which was phenomenal. And then he also wrote the poem Snowbound as well. So make sure you mark him as an author to know. What is he basically talking about here is that the fact that we are in God's hands and we need to trust him no matter what happens. He says in the first stanza, "Know well, my soul, God's hands control whatever thou fearest. Round him in calmest music rolls whate'er thou hearest. What to thee is shadow, to him is day, and on an end he knoweth, and not on a blind and endless way the spirit goeth." What he's basically saying here is God knows all things and he controls. What to us seems like something scary is nothing to God. I think of it this way. Recently, my nieces and nephews came over to my house to visit. I have a nephew who's about 2 years old who, everything is new and terrifying to him. Well, he didn't grow up with a dog. I have a 70-pound dog, a golden retriever. The dog came to run over to see him. She was happy, and she started barking because she was happy. He didn't know she was happy. He thought the dog was going to eat him alive or something. He just sees this big 70-pound animal coming to him, and he's terrified. He starts crying and all this, and the dog's like, "What? I'm just trying to be your friend, So from my point of view, I could tell the dog was happy. She was barking. It's going to be okay. Well, sometimes we get in the same way with God. We see something going on the outside, and it seems like something is barking at us, and we're like, "Oh no, this is awful. Why is this happening to me?" Well, yet God, who sees the bigger picture, says, "This is for your good. This is for your benefit. I'm putting this into your life so you can become a better person." So understand that's the faith that we need that John Greenleaf Whittier is talking about. All right, flip the page. Next story was a wonderful story, Beloved Friend of Little Waifs. By the way, the footnote, waifs means a what? Orphan, yes. This story is always really convicting to me every time I read this. How many of you were convicted when you read this? I am, because the prayer life and the faith life of our main character, which was whom, by the way, Sarah? Who was the main missionary in this story that we read about? Good, George Mueller. George Mueller, his prayer life was absolutely phenomenal. By the way, you may want to mark that George Mueller was a missionary to England from Germany. So George Mueller was a German individual, and he was a missionary in England. He had a special heart for the orphans that he saw everywhere in England, and he wanted to do something with them. And the story talked about how he lived by faith. Andreas, give me an example of the faith that he showed that was mentioned in the story. There were multiple examples here. What was one of them?
They didn't have any milk to drink, and so he just prayed, and some dude's milk truck broke down.
Exactly. Yes, he had so much faith, he didn't worry. He got up early that morning, prayed to God. In fact, when he prayed, it wasn't, oh, please, Lord, help us out. It was, Lord, I know you're going to take care of us. Thank you so much for bringing the milk somehow that we're going to get today. I don't know how you're going to do it, but we're going to get milk. Thank you, Lord. And so anyway, the kids all come down for the meal, for breakfast. There's still no milk. He prays to thank the Lord for the milk and the food that they're about to eat. And then as soon as he's done, as Andrea said, there was a knock on the door. Hey, my milk truck broke down. Do you want some milk? I can give it to you for free. So pretty incredible. You flip the page. There's other examples. But look on page 373, actually, before we go on. Very bottom of the first column, there's a sentence, second to last line that starts, he has. Mark these as lines to know what George Mueller said. He has sent money from all the ends of the earth, awakened people out of their sleep, sent people out of their way, has done seemingly almost everything that could be done to make sure that those who were trusting him should not lack for any good thing. So mark those as lines to know there. Very bottom of the first column, 373, and then top of the second, just the faith he had. Some other stories he had, there was a time he was on a boat. It was really foggy, and they needed to get through, and he prayed to the captain saying, I'm going to pray, the Lord's going to clear this fog. And the captain looked at him like he was crazy. He goes, you don't need to pray because you don't have the faith to do it. And he got them praying, and the fog was gone. Another time it was really cold, and they needed a furnace fixed. And he talked about how the weather warmed up just in time for them to fix the furnace, so they didn't need it, and they worked through the night. He also talked about a story of a deck chair that showed up for his wife just when the boat was going to get ready to leave, how they prayed for the souls of 2 different men. So he had a whole life full of faith, believing that God would answer prayers. Go ahead and get out your assignment pads. And as you're getting those out, let me just encourage you to be challenged by that thought, to make sure that we pray with faith, knowing that God will take care of us and God knows what's best for us. So, very convicting story to make sure we pray with faith.
Do you see how he's seamlessly included in those biblical thoughts? He helped to guide the students in, hey, you read this piece. What did you glean from it? And what biblical principles should be there? It should be evident in your English classes when you go to observe. What about history class? History, his story, it's the study of what man has done with the time that God has given him. So history should be taught in that narrative timeline. It's about people. You're making those people real. They were real people. They lived in a real time, in a real place. Make it personal. Make it individual to those students. Help them teach the character traits of those people. It's a place. History took place on a place. So geography is going to set that stage upon which God's plan is acted out. So there needs to be a place. There also needs to be the mention of time. Timelines help to put us into perspective the setting of these narratives and show the influence of one event could have then on another. We should see that flow. And throughout it, that thread, the role of Christ plays throughout all of history. You'll have other activities in history to help enhance that learning, such as helping them in the day and age we live in, helping them through current events, be able to decipher what is truth, bringing it back to the Bible, what is happening in the world around us, and how should we respond to that. And then science class. Science creation, seen as God's orderly design. Glory and worship should be reflected to the Creator, never to the creation. Do you learn about fascinating things? Absolutely. But it's reflective of the designer of those things. So the study of nature is for man's benefit and it's for God's glory. So we're going to see, and we walk into a science classroom, we're going to see a lecture followed with demonstration. Here's a concept and here's how it's demonstrated. It's also helped through different labs you might hold throughout the school year. And then they see science in action as a part of their STEM project, applying that scientific process. And also through science news articles, helping them to decipher, hey, the science around us, hey, what's truth? Bring it back to the Bible. Well, we focused our time looking at the interaction we should have with our teachers in fulfilling the quality control aspect of our responsibilities. So with God's help, we'll get into our classrooms for meaningful observation. We'll build our reputation for academic excellence and increase our spiritual influence in our communities. Only eternity will reveal the scope of the impact of the quality assurance has had and will have.